So when we talk about design at sort of the meta level, because this has to include commercial design, military design, civilian design theory, academia, I like to use the example of human beings, cave people, and starting with caves. So before human beings started using caves as shelter, other animals had been doing it for a very, very long time. So where's the design? Design would be the first human beings that decided to use caves as a shelter. Certainly there's some design there, followed by planning. Because once you have that act of innovation and it leads to a successful experience, you can then start to plan and repeat that process. And then the same thing would happen with the first time that a human being fashioned some sort of door or protective barrier, or perhaps discovered fire and then placed that warm fire within the cave, and so on and so forth. But here's where design really becomes prominent: the first cave art. Because all the other things that I mentioned, they had a direct and obvious purpose. And so even when the act of innovation was occurring, there probably was some sort of goal or objective that the designer was trying to implement there. But when we look at cave paintings and you think about the very first efforts, the very first human beings that expressed themselves on a cave wall and did art, why? What was the purpose there? What was the intent? And what's fascinating there is that when you start talking to students about the cave painting and the art and this something, what did it generate and why did it happen? Cave art became the stepping stones for a huge expansion of human understanding, creativity, and our ability to manipulate the environment, far more than applying a door to the front of the cave, although those things were necessary to get the humans in the cave. But once in the cave and that first art occurred, you had design creating an emergence of which the first artist probably had no idea. That art would move human beings into being able to sustain information from generation to generation beyond oral memorization. That knowledge management could become a written form. It would lead to writing. It would lead to human expressions that are captured in terms of time preservation. All of these things, as well as entertainment, storytelling, religions, all these things became much more capable because of the three-dimensional rendering of crude paints and dyes upon a wall. And no animal does artwork, although we now are replicating that with certain animals, giving them the tools, but no animal willingly does it on their own. It was the humans that did it. And so what is design? Design is the act of innovation which leads to the organization to creating that which is needed but does not yet exist. And so subsequent planning occurs in tandem with that, but it's the act of design that occurs first. And for military organizations in particular, design is where we need to change how things are occurring for both ourselves and the larger environment, the system, in a complex, dynamic, confusing, horrific, and challenging security context. And that change, if it's manipulated by designers within our organization, provides benefits, opportunities, as well as risks for the organization. If your adversary is the one doing the design, then you will receive the repercussions that are in. The value of design for SOF, that's a difficult question because you have to specify whether you're talking about the form of Special Operations Forces or the function therein. I personally resist the idea of specific types of design forms, one for a SOF way or one for an Army way or one for an Israeli way. I think that it's the context or the function that really differentiates whether you're doing design, say, for a civilian enterprise, a commercial or a capitalistic endeavor. Making a new product is one thing. However, if you're in a complex security environment, we now are starting to talk about what is SOF's function for the Department of Defense or writ large for the United States foreign policy. And when we think about SOCOM, we realize that Special Operations Forces are pound for pound fighting way above what they cost, as well as how difficult it is to train, equip, and sustain them. The entire SOCOM budget is equivalent to that of one aircraft carrier. But we have lots of aircraft carriers, but SOCOM is doing a significant, if not the majority, of military activities and has been for the past 2 decades in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, as well as elsewhere in the world. And so the challenge now becomes, well, if we're doing design and the context is a special operations missions that are unique, that are requiring a significant skill, technology, but also are operating under conditions that general purpose forces aren't going to be doing. So unconventional warfare, various raids, counterterrorism, and so on and so forth. Those missions require a different understanding of SOF function. And that's why design, predominantly in those contexts, requires an appreciation of joint interagency, coalition, and other stakeholders, as well as an appreciation of, well, how does a military action in my organization occur, and what are the consequences and the risks within these types of missions that are predominantly different than those that are done, say, at a general purpose force or a higher level of war, if you will. And so within those narrow differences on function, you could look at, well, how does SOF go about doing design? How do they organize? What methods are you teaching? Are you teaching one method? Are you teaching a variety? How are you equipping that design team? How are they interacting with their strategic sponsor? How are they enacting that change? How are they reflecting upon it? And these are some of the things that we get into at the design courses here at JSOU. The classes at JSOU, we offer a variety of courses. So we have a 5-day basic course called SOC 3440. We have an advanced course that you have to graduate the first course to get to that, and that's SOC 4445. It's also a 5-day course. And then we also have some smaller courses, such as a 4-day that is scalable to any level of classification, and that's when an organization in SOCOM or somewhere else in the Department of Defense or our international partners, they request not only to learn design, but they want us to apply it to a real-world challenge that they're working on. We go and work with them and focus on that particular design scenario or topic. We also have an international outreach design version of our basic and advanced courses, but those are done using more of the traditional delivery means, and we generally have to work through translators, so the content's a little different. Now, the two premier courses that we do, the 3440, the basic course, and the 4445, the advanced course, those are done using a combination of different learning techniques to include what's called a flipped classroom. Now, a flipped classroom is where you put all of your lessons online, and we have it in a deliverable means, and the students actually do those lessons, either 2 of them before they come to the course, and then each night we release them early so that the students are in the classroom during the day until around 2:30 in the afternoon, and then they have the rest of the day to learn those lessons on their own. So this is an adult learning model. However, during the day, there are no lessons, there are no lectures, there is no passive learning. It is 100% design facilitation with our faculty working with those design teams on that challenge. And we find that this is a much more immersive way of conveying the design experience and learning through doing, which is a hallmark of how we approach design education here at JSOU. There is an emergent military design movement, and I personally see this as a emerging sub-discipline of security studies, if we were going to try to put a pin on what this exactly is. And so the military design movement it's an international movement that draws upon different ways of interpreting how to do design in military or security contexts. Now you have bleed over from civilian and commercial design activities that have been around, really throughout the entire 20th century and formalized in the 1980s and 90s at schools like Stanford University, Berkeley, and so on. And you have commercial design companies out there, such as IDEO, and IBM has their own design brand as well called Enterprise Design Thinking. You have Agile and Waterfall and many, many different variations therein. And all of these different types of design on the commercial and the civilian side are moving towards new user experiences and new products within commercial or commerce. And in military applications, we are looking at the monopolization of organized violence. And when I say that, it sometimes takes people aback, but the application of organized violence, or even the passive ability to do that, is what generates all military activities, whether it's humanitarian efforts, peacekeeping, all the way up through high intensity combat activities, even including nuclear war. And so across that entire broad spectrum, you have a military context, which is different because militaries don't create new products and they don't create new user experiences, at least not directly. Therefore, the methodology has to be different, and military design is this emerging field that has really started in the early to late 90s, first in Israel, and then moving out into the American and the Australian and European militaries. And now you have multiple militaries applying different variations of how to creatively look and disrupt the military organization, the decision-making process, the existing language, doctrine, how to create opportunities for divergent thinking, to create the conditions for innovation, and to do this within a military context, understanding how security organizations are structured, how they make decisions, how they organize, how they communicate these ideas and express them, how do they assess and realize what they're doing and why. And so within this entire process, of which linear, deliberate military planning is a key ingredient, you have the design, the divergence, the disruption. This is also occurring sort of like in a strange orbit, if you will. The military design that JSOU provides is a unique approach that is what I term meta-methodological. We are looking at a variety of methods. We are going above all the different design methods, recognizing general patterns, and then providing at a basic and then an advanced level the key skills, the key understanding, as well as a groundwork of theory, so that these soft professionals can do design in a variety of joint interagency and combined task force, as well as international partner environments. The key here is that if, for example, you are working for a military commander who happens to come from the United States Army and they prefer Army design methodology, they want that language, that process, that feel, well then the soft professional doing the design needs to be at least cognizant of that, of those expectations, to help bridge the gap from the meta-methodological design into that deliverable that is resonating with that leader. But that task force, that soft organization, could quickly move or change their mission and now work for a Navy senior leader with a special ops background that has experience with the Sanford Design School. And so now that soft team needs to be able to shift that language, that process, that delivery from design to recognize and work upon those different opportunities and recognize those risks. So it's really a mixed martial arts approach in design here at JSOU. We're looking at a variety of what are the most popular, most mainstream different ways of doing design, and can that professional at least appreciate and understand them in order to operate in those contexts. Now the basic course is about just getting them the raw skills and to be able to work on a design team in these contexts. And then our advanced course, we really get into the depth of the theory of modifying, of creating hybrids, of harmonizing different design processes together to create new opportunities and new outcomes.